Ala Rasulihil Kareem. We are living in such times where the life of believers is becoming more and more challenging, especially in the West. There are different kind of pressures, whether you're living in US or UK or France or other such places. Increasingly, terrorism is being associated with Islam. And the people on the streets, many of them, they don't make a distinction between the Muslims who are residing, who are law-abiding citizens, and those who've been doing terrorism, pursuing terrorism in the name of Islam. I happened to be caught in such a situation right after 9/11 when I was in Mississippi. As everybody knows that Mississippi is a bit of a racist state. So what we found out the very next day, right after 9/11, was that our mosque was attacked with stones, with other such things. And while I was there, I felt a lot of pressure, a lot of fear because of the aggression from some of the people there. Most of the people were very friendly. Most of the people would ask you, how are you doing? Is America treating you nicely? And stuff like that. But then there was still that risk that a few of the people would call you terrorist, would call you extremist and stuff like that. Now again, we are facing the same situation, whether you're living in France or UK or US. What we need to do is to remember the sacrifices that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made during the Meccan period. During the Meccan period, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam faced a situation which you can think of as like 1,000 times more severe, more difficult, more challenging than what we are facing today. So when we see that there's somebody who's giving us a frown just because we look we look Muslims, we are wearing sunnah attire, or we have the sunnah beard on our face, or we're taking hijab on face. So in all those cases, we need to recall what Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself went through when he announced, when he openly started inviting people to Islam in Makkah. Imagine a typical day of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. As he's walking out of his home, he finds that on his way there's somebody who has laid thorn disguised with some fiber, some leaves of palm tree, and he is finding it hard to to escape it. So he's being injured with it, and it's happening almost every day. Again, when he walks out of his home, there are some people who would pursue him, who would come right after him, chanting slogans against him. Somebody's calling him a magician, somebody's calling him a sorcerer, somebody's calling him a foreteller, and so on and so forth. When he goes back home, he finds that somebody has thrown filth in the pot of cooked meal. When he goes to Makkah and he goes to Haram and he starts praying in Mataf, he again finds that there are some people who are saying, who are swearing against him and saying all kind of bad things to him. Somebody is threatening him. Somebody is approaching him physically with physical abuse. So Hazrat Abdullah bin Masud narrates that once I was there with Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Abu Jahl was there with his own group of friends. And Abu Jahl asked his group of friends, who's gonna bring the entrails of a camel, the gut of a camel from Banu Fala and Fala, and then throw it on the back of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt rose up and brought the entrails. And while Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was performing prostration, he was in the sajda, he threw it on his back, right between his shoulders. Imagine such a situation when you're praying to your Lord and all the filth is on your back. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could not even raise his head from there. He remained in prostration, and while he was suffering through this, these kuffar, Abu Jahl, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, and others were actually, the muhaddithin say that they were falling on each other because of laughter and the kind of state they were in. So they were making so much fun of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. As Abdullah bin Masud says that, I wish I had the power, the clout, some other people with whom I could have approached Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and removed those entrails. But it was eventually Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's daughter, Hazrat Fatima Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anha, who approached him and removed the entrails of the camel from his back, and then he raised up. Then he rise up. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he rose up, he invoked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath against those infidels, and he named them. He named Abu Jahl, he named Udba, he named Walid, he named Umayyah bin Khalaf. All of those, Hazrat Abdullah bin Masud says that all of those against whom Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam invoked the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I found them, all of them, dead in one of the wells of Badr, right after the battle of Badr. So again, on one hand, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is facing all this distress, all this opposition, all this cruelty and oppression against him and his people. But on the other hand, at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help is also there. So one of the things is that when you stand firm on truth, you stand firm on haqq, then after some passage of time there would be some test, there would be some tribulation, there would be some trials, but then the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be overwhelming, will be very evident, as was in the case of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And again, whoever follows the path of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, recites those dua and takes the same path of sunnah, the same promises, the same wa'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help is with them even today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to protect them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help them. This is something that we need today. In order to stand firm on Islam, on Sunnah, on the path of Sunnah, we need to understand that there is a ghaibi nizam, there's an unseen system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which, under which there are certain promises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made to those people who would stand firm on iman, on deen, on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the days when the trial, the tribulations, and the test, the fitna would be on its peak. So even today, there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam which says that a time would come when restoring, reviving a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ would be as difficult, as challenging, and as full of pain as if one would have held a piece of burning coal in his palm. But then the rewards for such sacrifices are great. So the promise on such a sacrifice is that such a person would receive, the Nabi Karim is giving the glad tidings, that such a person would receive the reward of 100 martyrs. So being steadfast and holding strong to the very basics of Islam in such a hostile environment, not only invokes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, but at the same time it gives you immense reward. Another of such hadith says that if you're facing such an environment where sticking to the basics of iman is becoming difficult, even when you're thinking of going for prayer to the masjid, you feel threatened that there's somebody who would approach you, a couple of people, a couple of persons, who would maybe who would fire at you, as happened in Houston some time ago, or perhaps would attack you in some other fashion. So all of these things are happening. Or if you happen to be a sister, then they would force you to go to your home, or force you to confinement if you're not conforming to their laws in terms of, or their norms in terms of the way you dress. So the thing is that in these times, what becomes very relevant for us is the sacrifices that was made by Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Sahaba during the early Meccan period. And let me mention to you how on some of the occasions the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came. So on one such instance, when Jamil bin Harb, the wife of Abu Lahab, she knew that Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and along with him Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala sitting in Haram, in Kaaba, near Kaaba. So she approached them and she picked up some pebbles on the way so that she would throw it on Na'udzubillah Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's face. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did was, when she approached, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away her power of sight from her. So she could see Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, but she could not see Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She sweared and she uttered certain words and she threatened Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of Abu Bakr and told him to convey the message to Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But she could not throw the pebbles on Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam because Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away the sight of Jamil and she could not see Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So sometimes the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then and there at that moment. On another occasion, Abu Jahl approached Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he was threatening Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam was again praying in the vicinity of Kaaba. And he said that I am going to throw dust on your face, and as soon as you're going to prostrate before your Lord, I'm going to put my foot, na'uzubillah, I'm going to put my foot on your neck. And Nabi Karim in turn warned him of dire consequences if he attempted to do so. And guess what happened next? Abu Jahl, who thought he was the mightiest of all Arabs and Quraysh, and he said that he ignored Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam's warning. He started approaching him, and suddenly there was everybody who was around saw fear on his face. And with the aggression that he was approaching and moving in and closing in on Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he suddenly backed off with a look of fear on his face. So his companion asked, "What happened?" And he replied by saying that as I was approaching Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I saw a ditch of fire. There was a ditch of fire between me and him, and I saw wings. And then the companions of the Prophet ﷺ asked him what happened. So he explained to them that was the Malaika, it was the wings of the Malaika, and had he come any closer to the Prophet, the Malaika would have dismantled Abu Jahl limb by limb. So some of the, this help is, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is real. And Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us some prayers for when we feel threatened, from the people around us, that they would become a fitna for us, they would make following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala difficult for us. Then there are certain dua of Nabi Karim. So for example, one of them is, Nabi Karim teaches us, he says, pray, Allahumma inna naj'aluka fi nuhurihim wa na'udhu bika min shururihim, which means, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we put you in front of him, or in front of them. Those from whom we fear for our life, fear for our religion, Ya Allah, we put, your Zat, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we put your personality in front of those who are threatening us with those kind of threats. And wa na'udhu bika min shururihim means that we seek your refuge against their mischief. And then there is Allah mustar awratina wa amin rawatina. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect us from our worst fear, and raise some barriers between them and us. So these are the prayers that we can pray all the time while we are feeling threatened. And these are the times, again, the reward is immense, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been promised and is certain, but we need to keep on reading and seek inspiration from the life of Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba and the sacrifices they made. Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to remain steadfast in these times of trials and tribulations. I'll be with you inshallah tomorrow again at the same time. Assalamu alaikum.